welcome back. Breast cancer is a major public health problem in the United States and is associated with more than 40,000 deaths each year. The National Cancer Institute has awarded our next guest a $10 million team science grant to investigate the mechanisms regulating cancer cells seeding tumors in the lung. Joining us now to share more details is the professor and chair of molecular pharmacology at Albert Einstein College of Medicine and associate director for shared resources at Montefiore's Einstein Center, Dr. Jonathan Bacher. And Dr. Bacher, thank you so much for being with us.
Okay, pleased to be with you.
Thank you, and congratulations. I know the grant is a $10 million grant over the next 5 years. Walk us through a little bit about how this grant is actually going to play out and what we can expect.
Well, I think the major issue in solid tumors like breast cancer is that the tumor isn't usually what kills the patient. It is the metastasis. And that's what this grant is really designed to try to work on, to understand at a very basic level what are the mechanisms by which tumor cells can leave the tumor, migrate through the blood, exit the blood at another site and sort of set up shop. And metastatic disease is really important issue for cancer patients in the Bronx, particularly with breast cancer. The rates of cancer, of death from cancer, are 20% higher in the Bronx than they are in the rest of New York. And there's also particularly high rates in Black and Hispanic women. And the Montefiore Einstein Cancer Center, which is one of the fourth oldest in the country, this is actually our 50th year, under the direction of Dr. Ed Chu, has really made a major focus to try to improve cancer care and cancer treatment for the patients in the Bronx. And so ideally what this program will do will be to identify novel targets that could be used to develop novel drugs.
Give us a little bit about the research, because I understand you've got some innovative methods that you're going to be used to conduct this research.
Sure. Well, one of the key issues is that metastasis is a very dynamic process. As I've suggested, that tumor cells leave the tumor, go through the blood, arrive in the lung. It all happens very fast. And so understanding how those tumor cells are able to survive in this completely alien environment is complex. And so some of the technologies that have been developed in the Bruce Lipper Biophotonics Center at Einstein have been development of essentially windows that one can put into the chest wall of a mouse. They're sort of like a microscope slide, but implanted in the chest wall. And what that lets you do is to actually image tumor cells as they enter the lung from the blood vessels, as they cross from the blood vessel into the lung, as they subsequently decide to divide or to hold off on dividing. Some of them die. And you can start to really observe those processes in real time in a live mouse. So it really gives you an unprecedented degree of clarity, much better than just sort of, looking at histological slides at different times, because you can really study what's going on in real time.
Yeah. What are the things that are really piquing your curiosity when it comes to this? In other words, talk to me about what are you hoping that you're going to be able to find, questions that you might have answered?
Well, again, the goal is, as for the entire cancer center, the goal is really to address cancer care and cancer treatment for our patient population in the Bronx. This is the preclinical grant. That means the studies we are doing are largely done in mice. But the whole idea of preclinical studies funded by the National Cancer Institute is that you can apply what you learn from an animal model and then subsequently move that into clinical trials or eventually into the clinic. And there have been notable examples of that kind of development at Einstein, for instance. There are novel clinical trials for both cell-based and small molecule-based treatments for breast cancer. And actually, some of the collaborators in our program project have developed, based on the kind of imaging studies that we're doing here, novel diagnostic procedures for trying to evaluate a patient to see who's at high risk for developing metastatic disease, as well as novel approaches to actually treating metastasis. So that's really the goal, that the understanding of the basics of the process can lead to developing new therapeutics or new diagnostics.
Montefiore Cancer Center has been doing great work here in our community, really dealing with this issue and then some. Talk to us and share with a little bit about with our viewers about the work that goes on at Montefiore Cancer Center.
I'm sorry, repeat the last part of the question?
Sure, I said share with us a little bit about the work that goes on at Montefiore Cancer Center.
Well, again, we don't just do breast cancer. I mean, there are investigators who are interested in a wide range of different cancer types, and it ranges from, very basic studies, understanding how cancer cells work and how they're able to grow and how they're able to travel from one organ to another, to more clinical studies trying to determine both novel therapeutics as well as new combinations of therapeutics that might be important for cancer. And there's also a lot of emphasis in the Cancer Center on prevention and outreach to the community in terms of screening and prevention. I mean, for instance, this is a flyer from an upcoming, I guess you can't see that. Sorry, I won't do that again. From October 8th, there's a free screening event that Montefiore is sponsoring for women in the community screening for breast cancer. And well as there's a lot of outreach in terms of approaches to behavior modification to try to limit risk factors for different kinds of cancers. So I think really the Cancer Center is trying to cover the whole gamut from basic research for mechanisms, new therapeutics, outreach to deal with risk factors and screening, and eventually new therapies for cancer patients.
Yeah. And once again, I want you to give me a little bit of a highlight as to when we talk about African American women, when it comes to breast cancer, those numbers are a little bit larger than normal.
Yeah, both African American women and Hispanic women have higher rates of mortality and higher rates of metastasis in breast cancer. And innovative work done at Einstein, for instance, has shown that it's early days, and they're still trying to, really establish how widespread that there is. But there are some suggestions that in African American women, that standard chemotherapy might actually have different effects on the ability of the tumor cells to metastasize than they would in other populations. So if one can identify, differences in different populations in terms of how they respond to therapeutics, that's really important work to do.
Yeah. So this grant is over the course of 5 years, and I want to talk about that first year. We understand the first year. Give us a little bit more about what we can see in possibly years 2 and 3.
Well, it's hard to break up a 5-year grant like that, right? I mean, the studies take a long time. We have to develop reagents, in some cases, in animal models. So I think, what we hope to see is that, we have initial hypotheses as to the role of certain intracellular proteins in the tumor cells and how they affect the ability of those tumor cells to metastasize. We make models where we manipulate the tumor cells to increase or decrease the expression of those proteins. We sort of see what happens, and then based on those results, we can then, further elaborate the experiments to work further downstream. But it's a little hard in a very basic science grant to give you, concrete milestones of what's happening in year 2 versus year 3.
Yeah. And your initial reaction to receiving the grant?
I'm sorry?
Your initial reaction to receiving the grant?
Was to be delighted and to be excited, because these grants take a lot of people. This grant was 5 years in the making. We started working groups 5 years ago to try to identify investigators who shared common interests and shared common ideas about how to study breast cancer metastasis. And the key to an NCI program project, which is the kind of grant this is that it can't just be a collection of individual projects. The individual projects have to really work together in a way so that the outcome is greater than the sum of the parts. And finding the right investigators that you can do that with takes some time. As I say, we've been working on this for 5 years, and we just got the funding last July. And I think, as one of the PIs on the project said, now the fun part starts. So
Yeah.
now we really get to dive into these studies and see what we can learn. So eventually we can help people.
Dr. Jonathan Backer, we got to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us. Again, congratulations. We're looking forward to seeing
Thank you.
the work that's being done in the area of breast cancer that affects so many people. Thank you again for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you very much for having me.
All righty. Now, if you want more information, you can visit the website at einsteinmed.edu, and then also follow them on Twitter and Instagram at EinsteinMed. We encourage you to don't go anywhere. We've got more open coming up. We'll return right after this.